Imagine for a moment that it's a scorching hot summer day. Now I know I'm asking a lot of you, given the recent weather, but indulge me. So it's a hot summer day, you've been outside, maybe you're working in the yard, you've gone for a run, you've ridden your bike, and you come back inside and all you want is a cool glass of water. You go over to the kitchen faucet, turn it on, and it gives you your water like this, drip by drip by drip. How would that make you feel? What'd you say? Thirsty, frustrated, maybe a little impatient. When you want a glass of water, you want it to come out in a constant and steady stream, don't you? And as a business owner, don't you want your prospects and your clients to come in a constant and steady stream as well? See, but unfortunately, most marketing strategies will give you clients and prospects drip by drip. But speaking will give it to you in a constant and steady stream. And there are 5 reasons why speaking is so powerful. But before we get into that, I do want to see who's in the room. So raise your hand if you are currently using speaking to grow your business. Okay, great, a lot of you, wonderful. Now raise your hand if you're not, but it's something you'd like to do in 2014. Okay, wonderful. And if you are with a corporation and you give presentations inside your corporation, don't tune me out because you're going to get tips that you can use for your presentations too, okay? All right, so let's jump into the 5 reasons why speaking is so powerful. The first is that speaking gives you instant credibility. It's one of the only marketing strategies where you are credible the second you take the stage. You don't actually have to earn credibility. The second is that it gives you visibility. And if you want to be the standout expert in your field, and if you want to help as many people as possible with the wonderful work you do, you need to be visible, and speaking is one of the best ways to do that. The third reason, and this is my personal favorite, this is actually why I started speaking back in 2008, is that speaking gives you leverage, right? So in the amount of time that you would meet with one person for coffee, you could meet with 10, 20, or 150. So let's just take a look at this room. There's 150 people here today. How many hours would it take for me to meet with each of you one-on-one for coffee? What do you think? About 300, right? Figure it takes about, an hour, an extra hour with the drive time there and back. It would take about 300 hours for me to meet with you each one-on-one. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm a busy business owner, I'm a busy mom, and I'm always looking for ways to leverage my time. The fourth reason is that speaking results are very quick. So your return on investment is very quick. So as an example, I gave a talk last year where in 75 minutes, I brought in on-the-spot paid over $11,000 worth of business. I took that same product and put it online, and it took us 9 months to reach that level of sales, okay? The other thing is if you're using speaking to bring in leads or prospects, so you're not selling something, you will get more warm leads in 1 hour than most business owners get in 1 month. And then the 5th and final reason why speaking is so powerful is that speaking is often no cost, low cost, or if you get to a certain level, it can pay you on the front end and on the back end. So the bottom line is, if you're not using speaking to grow your business, you may be stepping over thousands of dollars each and every month. Now, there's a catch though. In order to reap the rewards that speaking offers, you have to know how to write talks that will do 3 things simultaneously. You have to know how to write talks that will educate, so provide people with valuable content, that will engage, give them content in a way that they enjoy it and they're interested in what you're saying, and then third, write content that actually will sell for you. And I use the word sell loosely. When I say the word sell, I mean, yes, if you're selling an actual physical product or program, but also sell people on the idea that they might want to work with you if you're capturing leads. And finally, even sell people on the idea that they should listen to you and buy into whatever your mission or idea is. Okay? And this kind of talk is an animal all of its own. And so if you're out there speaking right now and you're not getting the results you want, chances are this is the reason why. And you may stay out there speaking, spinning your wheels like a lot of presenters do, thinking that speaking does not work. And my client, Dr. Becky Perry, is a perfect example of this. So I want to bring you back. It was August of 2011. And if you had been sitting with me in Dr. Becky's office, you would have noticed that she looked really discouraged. And this was unusual for her because she's this, short, young firecracker and just a can-do attitude and always like moving on to the next thing. And so I said, Becky, what's going on? Why do you look so discouraged? She said, Deirdre, we've been trying for 2 years to get past seeing 40 to 50 patients per week. And nothing's changing. We've tried every marketing strategy under the sun, and we're thinking about the dreaded plan B of closing the clinic. So I said, what about speaking or using speaking? And she said, we've heard that speaking is the best way to grow our business, and you may have heard this too. But we feel like we're on the outside of some insider secret. Like there's some code we can't crack. Every time we give a talk, we feel discouraged. We don't have a lot of audience participation, we're not sure if what we say is going to hit the mark, and we rarely bring in any patients when we speak. So let's fast forward just a couple months later to November of that same year. And they would walk out of every talk feeling excited and energized. And they were excited because they knew exactly what to say going in, the audience was engaged, and their closing average skyrocketed to 70% of the room. They even gave one talk where they brought in 103 new patients. So what do you think that did to their practice? It doubled it, almost overnight. And I remember Becky saying to me, Deirdre, this is like a miracle. We are so thrilled we no longer have to worry about closing the clinic. So you may be wondering, well, how did they go from thinking about closing the clinic and 3 months later doubling their practice through speaking? And if you were to ask Becky, she would say it was learning the Speak and Get Results system for writing their talks. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. Now, I obviously can't get into the entire system in the next 30 minutes, but I have chosen 2 strategies to get you started. So here's our roadmap. First, you're going to learn 2 of the top 2 sales-killing mistakes most presenters make and how to avoid making those yourself. You're going to learn which is the biggest and the one you want to avoid at all costs. And then finally, if you want to take what you learn here to a deeper level so that you can be the kind of speaker that can go out and consistently bring in business through speaking, I'm going to offer you 2 free resources to get started. And what excites me about what you're going to learn today is that if you take it and you use it, you'll be able to take what you learned today and use it tomorrow, okay? If you take it and you use it, you will know how to command the attention of the audience from the first words out of your mouth. You're going to have more confidence when you speak. You'll have a more engaged audience, and you'll make more sales. So how does that sound? Does that sound good? All right, great. All right. So, you know what I want to tell you real quick? I do want to tell you just for 30 seconds or so how the Speak and Get Results system came about, because I always want to give credit where credit is due. So I've been blessed enough to study under one of the best speaking coaches and speakers in the world. His name is Craig Valentine. And Craig developed a system called World-Class Speaking that helps speakers become world-class speakers. And so with his permission, what I have done is I've adapted his system and added components. So I've kept in the components that make speakers world-class speakers, but I've added training that teaches entrepreneurs how to use speaking as a marketing strategy. And so the result is what I call the Speak and Get Results business building blueprint. Okay? All right. So would you believe that most speakers start killing their sales from the first words out of their mouth? Now you might be thinking, well, how's that possible? I haven't even said anything. So have you ever picked up a book, read maybe the first page or two, and based on that, thought the book was going to be boring? What'd you do with the book? You set it down, right? Okay. So just like the first couple of pages of any book is critical for making the sale to the reader that you should keep reading, the first 5 to 30 seconds of your talk is critical to capturing your audience's attention and to getting them to keep listening. People will literally decide in the first 5 to 30 seconds if they're going to pay attention or tune you out. Now, what do most speakers first say when they're introduced and take the stage? Give me some examples of what you've seen or heard. Okay, they might tell a joke. Thank you. Today I'm going to talk about. They might reintroduce themselves, right? Things like that, something about the weather, which might be okay in this environment. But we call those the unpleasant pleasantries. And they're unpleasant because nobody cares about that. Nobody cares. And if you engage in the unpleasant pleasantries, you risk losing your audience. And so that is sales killing mistake number 1, engaging in the unpleasant pleasantries. And here's the deal. If you lose your audience from the beginning, it is really hard to bring them back. But if you get their attention right away, they are more likely to stay with you for the entire presentation. Okay? And I want to drive this point home just a little deeper because my goal is that you will leave here today having committed to yourself that you will never engage in the unpleasant pleasantries again. Okay? All right. So, Mary. Sorry, she's like chewing. Sorry, Mary. I'm not going to ask you something yet. Let's say I came up to you and I said, guess what? I just inherited oceanfront property, Pacific Coast, and I am going to build a garbage dump there. What would you say to me? What? That would be insane. That would be a waste of precious real estate. So how does this apply to your talk? The first 5 to 30 seconds of any presentation is precious real estate. And just like you would never build a garbage dump on the Pacific Coast, please don't build a garbage dump on the first 5 to 30 seconds of your talk. All right, do I have you convinced? I do, okay. Are you wondering what you should do instead? Yes, that's where we're going next. All right, so what you want to do instead is you want to do what we call open with a bang. Now don't get nervous, it does not mean you have to sing and dance, okay? It doesn't even mean you have to tell jokes. And there are 7 ways to open with a bang, and I'm going to share my top 2 favorites. So the first is to ask a question. And the question should ideally do 3 things. The question should be related to your content. The question should be you focused, so audience focused. And why do you think that's important? Because that's why the audience is there, right? And people, let's face it, we love thinking about ourselves, don't we? People are going to be more engaged if you get them to think about their own life and get them to think about themselves, okay? And then the third thing the question should do is it should get them nodding their heads yes in agreement with you. And the reason for that is that the earlier people nod their heads yes in agreement, the more likely they are to do that for the entire presentation. Okay? So the first way to open with a bang is to ask a question. The second is to dive right into a story or an analogy. Dive right in. And again, what's important here is that you make sure it has some relevance to the content that you're going to be talking about. So if you look at how I opened today, which way did I open? Did I do number 1 or number 2? Analogy, right? Kind of story, and I kind of couple them. I actually do enjoy coupling them together. So I jumped into my analogy, and then I asked you a question that got you to think about yourself, and then I went back into the analogy. You can also do it the other way around. You can ask a question, and then dive right into a story or an analogy, and that's a really powerful way to open. Okay? Now, there's 2 tips I want to give you because I always get this question from audiences and clients. The first is people will say, so Deirdre, do you mean literally the first words out of my mouth should be my opening bang? I shouldn't say anything before that. Yes. I mean, literally, unless something happens where, like, let's say Rick tripped as he was getting down. I wouldn't just come up here and be like, hey, right? I would, are you okay? Right? That would be different. So unless something happens, I would make sure you're okay, Rick. Are you okay? Right? Use a different example, but you didn't, so it's okay. But unless there's some reason why it would look odd if you jumped into your opening, the first words out of your mouth need to be your opening bang. So notice that he and I passed each other and we shook hands and I said thank you directly to him, but I didn't come up here and look at Rick and say thank you, Rick, for having me here today. And there's a great place in the presentation to do that, so watch for it because you're going to see me do it here. And that's where I recommend you doing it, okay? The other tip that I want to give you is that I totally just lost my train of thought. Okay, hold on. The second tip, what's the other question people always ask me? Someone help me out. Mary? Oh, I know. Okay, I got it. All right, so let's say you're going to introduce yourself, right? Let's say you're in a situation, it's your own event, and no one's going to introduce you. Or you might be in a situation like I'm in a lot where I'm doing teleseminars or maybe you do webinars and there's no one else to introduce you. What do? So what you do is you deliver your opening bang and then you introduce yourself. So this is how something like that might look. So let's pretend I said, imagine that it's a really hot day and I get to the end of my analogy, right? And I say, many marketing strategies will give you results drip by drip, but speaking will give it to you in a constant and steady stream. And there's 5 reasons why that's true. But before we get into that, I should introduce myself to you. And then that's where you would introduce yourself. And then you jump right back into your content. Does that make sense? Okay, great. So raise your hand if you are committed from this day forward to never use the unpleasant pleasantries again. All right, there's still a few holdouts there. Tell me where you're speaking, I won't be there. No, I'm kidding. Okay, and here's what can happen when you do this. I had a client, David, who learned this tip, I think it was like on a Wednesday, and he had a talk on a Thursday. Thursday afternoon, I get this email from him, and he said, Deirdre, this was unbelievable. I opened with a bang, and it was the difference between people just sort of politely sitting back in their seat like they normally do when I'm speaking, to people leaning forward and hanging on my every word. So what do you think that did to his confidence level? Went through the roof. And then what do you think that does to his sales? It increases the sales as well, okay? So this one tip, if you got nothing else from today, this one tip will send your confidence level as a speaker through the roof. I've seen it time and time again. And there's nothing more powerful than knowing you know how to command the attention of the room from the first words out of your mouth. So the way to avoid sales-killing mistake number 1 is to open with a bang. So let's move on to number 2. Sales-killing mistake number 2 happens when you drown people in facts and figures. Okay? So I want you to imagine you're 5 years old. You're in your room getting ready for bed. And let's say you're talking with your dad about your day as you pull up the zipper on your feety pajamas. And as you've done each and every night, you go over to your bookshelf and with great anticipation, you carefully select the perfect book. You give the book over to your dad and you say, Daddy, tell me what? Story? No. You don't say, Daddy, tell me a story. You say, Daddy, tell me a fact. Tell me a statistic. I really don't care what the little pig thought or what they wore or how they felt. I just want to know the statistical probability of that wolf eating those pigs. Now, why would you never say that? You don't care, and it's boring. It's boring. So here's the thing to remember, and I think as we get older and we get into business and we get all buttoned up, we forget about this, that maturing does not equal boring. Okay? Maturing does not equal boring. Now, I gave this presentation a few weeks ago, and I think I offended someone, so I want to make sure I don't do this here, because she felt like I was saying that I hated facts and statistics and they were bad, and she loved them. I am not saying that. If you love them, I think that's great. And notice I've used facts and statistics in this presentation. What I am saying is you want to wrap your facts and your statistics into some sort of context that the audience can grasp onto. And a story is one of the best ways to do that. Okay? So the antidote to sales killing mistake number 1 of drowning people in facts and figures and boring them to tears is to add stories to your presentation. And that's going to do 2 things for you. Leading cognitive scientist Roger C. Schenck says, human brains are not ideally set up to understand logic. They are ideally set up to understand stories. And so your audience will not only enjoy your information more, but they're going to retain it more if you wrap it into the context of a story. The second thing it's going to do for you is that people buy first on emotions, and then they back it up with logic. And so as a speaker, you want to make sure you are hitting people at an emotional level if you want them to buy something from you or buy into your ideas and your mission. Okay? And a story is one of the best ways to do that. Now, I want to give you a couple of tips about storytelling. The first is there's a movement for storytelling, right? Have you seen more of this? There's more books on storytelling, speaking on storytelling classes, and this is really good. But the one thing I'm not hearing a lot of people say is that you got to make sure your story is directly tied to your content. Okay? So your, alcoholic's best friend's father who, lost his car might not be the most appropriate story for the content you're trying to deliver, right? So it is important to be vulnerable and to share some things about yourself, but you want to make sure you're sharing things that are relevant. And so here's the only time you ever want to tell a story when you speak. You want to know the only time? Yes. Okay. The only time you ever tell a story when you're speaking is to move the audience forward in some way. If your story does not move them forward, then do not tell that story. That is not the story that goes with that particular piece of content. Does that make sense? Yes. Okay, great. All right, so that's the first tip about storytelling. The second tip is that, let me ask you this. Have you ever heard a story or given a story where you were rambling or someone was rambling? Right? What's that like? Torture on either side. Whether you're giving it, you're like, just help me. I'm stuck in all the details, right? Or listening to it, it's torture. So you don't want to tell stories that ramble. So you want to make sure, particularly in a business setting, that you plan your stories out in advance, that they have a clear structure, that you've actually practiced them. Like that Dr. Becky story, I cannot even tell you how many hours I have practiced and retold that story, like hundreds of hours, okay, on that one story. And so you want to make sure that you got the story down and that it makes a clear and compelling point. Okay? And how are we doing, Kelsey, on time? I don't know if Kelsey's still in here. Let me see. Okay. We're good? Okay. Tell you a story. Let's see. All right. So we have probably about 5 minutes for questions. What questions are coming up for you, if any? Yes?
Well, I understand the power of the presentation, but it's how we get people to the presentation that I would love to get some advice. You know, A, come up with a great topic. B, how do you find people who care about your business, whatever that may be?
So Rick will have me back later in the year for that presentation. Does that sound good? It's a totally different presentation. So we can chat for a few minutes offline, but it's a different topic. And it's a good one. It's a good one, yeah.
What do you think if you talk about telling a story and wrapping it, in something interesting?
Yep.
About using PowerPoint, I know you're not using it.
Right. Yes. No, I think that's great. I'm not using it well, I don't use it a lot. Sometimes I use it, sometimes I don't. But in order to have this setup, we couldn't use PowerPoint today. And I like this setup better than the other setup because I'm much closer to the people in the back. But yes, as long as your PowerPoint is like what Rick was saying, visual, PowerPoint is great. The way that people commit death by PowerPoint is when it is bullet point after bullet point after bullet point and charts and graphs that nobody can see, right? Nobody can read. Just don't do that. But I think having really great visuals with your story is a powerful complement. Yeah, and one other thing about PowerPoint is the PowerPoint presentation shouldn't be your presentation. It should complement your presentation, okay? And so again, the only reason to put a slide in is if it moves the audience forward in some way. It shouldn't really be used for you as a crutch. Great question. I think we could probably do one or two more. Yeah?
So, what do you recommend in your presentation that will cause people to email you or call you without coming across?
Great, you're gonna see me do that. So watch how I do it. I'm gonna model exactly what I teach. Okay? Great question. Yeah, let's do one more.
So what do you think about more improv, working with what you get in the audience versus canned speech?
Yeah, that's a great question. I love improv. First of all, I think every speaker, really every business person should take improv classes. It will really help you think on your feet much quicker. But it depends. And you know what? It's going to depend. If I was a different person here, I might give you a different answer. I come from the school of thought that it's really important whenever you speak, whether you're doing a keynote, a training, or a presentation that's a marketing presentation, that you have a structure that you know very well and that you step outside the structure. Like right now, I'm stepping outside my structure because I don't know what you're going to ask me, right? But that you're able to step back into the structure. So the structure actually gives you the freedom to have more improv because you're not going to get off track that way and you're not going to go off on tangents that aren't important to the audience and aren't important to your end goals. Does that answer the question? Okay, great. Let me just check the time, hold on. Okay, let's do one more question and then anything else? Yeah?
What are some avenues or some of the best avenues to get the speaking engagements in the first place?
Yeah, again, that kind of goes to that, not this topic, but I will give you the golden nugget answer on that. The best way to get speaking engagements is through your warm network. You are sitting on a gold mine of speaking engagements right now. Each one of you is sitting on a gold mine, and you probably don't even realize it. I've been speaking since 2008, 2009. I've never gotten a speaking engagement that wasn't from a warm contact, ever. And in fact, I'm here today because Scott Peterson introduced me to Rick. Scott and I were meeting, and he said, "Is there anything I can do to help you?" And I go, "Yeah, you know what? I give this presentation that really helps entrepreneurs with their speaking skills. Do you belong to any organizations that you think would like to have me as a speaker?" And Scott goes, "Yeah, you know what? I go to Club E. I'll introduce you to Rick." I said, "Great, can you do an email introduction?" He did. We got together, and here I am. And that's the formula I use for every speaking gig that I book. So hopefully that helped you too. But we can do a longer presentation on that if you want to sometime.
Actually, we still have time, so the questions are flowing.
Okay, well, I still have more. I have more to do because I have 15 minutes? Okay, so we're good. Okay, so let's talk about which of those two mistakes, and those aren't the only two sales killing mistakes, but I picked those for you because I thought they'd have the broadest appeal. I assumed there'd be some people here who are talking inside of corporations, and those two techniques you can use no matter where you're speaking. And in addition to that, with storytelling, even if you never get up and give a presentation, you should use that in one-on-one prospecting and client meetings. So I've had clients come to me who have said, wow, Deirdre, I started working with you because I wanted to learn how to write these great speeches. What I didn't realize is that my conversion rate would increase because I started adding these stories to my presentations, okay? And just to show the power of this, one of my clients is a financial advisor in California, and she was been out there speaking for a while and would get a decent conversion rate. She gave this one talk, and there were 100 people in the audience. 85 of them signed up for her initial consultation. Yeah. And I said to her, well, why do you think, what was the difference? And she said it was adding stories. I wasn't using stories before. I added stories, and that really connected with the audience. So don't underestimate the power of storytelling, because it doesn't matter if you're 9 or 90, in the basement with your kids or in the boardroom with executives, everyone loves a good story. So of those 2 sales-killing mistakes, which one do you think is the worst? Like the one you really want to avoid at all costs? The using the unpleasant pleasantries or drowning people in facts and figures?
Facts and figures.
Yeah. That's the one that you want to avoid at all costs, because if you bore people aren't that forgiving if you bore them. Right? I mean, you don't want to be bored. And so if you bore people and they start really tuning out, it doesn't matter if you have this great service and this great product and you can really help them. They might not listen long enough to hear you tell them what it's about. Okay? So everything that you learned here today is something you can, and I hope you do, apply right away. But as you can imagine, it's only the tip of the iceberg. So if you want to get results like Dr. Becky has had with speaking, or I've had, or some of my other clients, then you'll want to dive into the entire Speak and Get Results system. So I've got 2 free resources to offer you to get you started. And Dara and Sue, if you could just pass out the handouts. I don't know where Sue is. Okay. They're just going to drop these on each table, and then you can just pass them around and take one. So the gentleman who asked me about getting leads and making an offer, this is the part, so just watch. I'll model exactly what I teach. I think everyone's got them. I think, Dara, you're on the last one. Okay, so the first resource is really for everybody. The first resource is a copy of my free report, and this is what it looks like. You'll get it by email. It's how to get more warm leads in 1 hour than most business owners get in 1 month. And in the report, I outline the 7 elements you must include in your speech in order to wow your audience and bring in business through speaking. Now with that, you will get 2 speaking tips a month that people tell me are really helpful because they're really short and they're really actionable and they're things that you can use right away. And I promise you I'm not an email stalker. You're not going to get emails from me every day. Okay? So if you would like that, just check off box number 1, and at the bottom, just stick your name and your email. I don't need your phone number. Now the second resource is not going to be for everybody. The second resource is a complimentary Speak and Get Results strategy session with either me or my strategy session coach, Jennifer. And what we do in this session is, first we're going to take a look at speaking and where it fits in your marketing strategy. Then you're going to have already taken an assessment that we're going to email to you that takes about 5 minutes to go through. That's going to highlight the skill set you need to develop. So where's the gap in your skill set in order to write these talks that educate, engage, and sell? And then finally, if we think you're a good fit, we will talk to you about what it would look like to work with us through the Speak and Get Results program. So if you want one of those sessions, the way that you get that is you check box number 2, and then you see how there's 4 little boxes? If you can check each one of those boxes off, that means you're saying yes, then you qualify for one of those sessions. And I do have a favor to ask you from one busy business owner to another. if you sign up for one of those sessions today, because my schedule is out there, so you'll sign up today before you leave, please do it with the intent that you're 100% committed to showing up. Because I'm committed to being there for you, Jennifer's committed to being there for you, and if you don't, you take our time, but more importantly, you take the spot from someone else who really could have used it, and we have a limited number of spots available, okay? So if you want that, fill in your name, your phone number, email, check the box where it says you'll make every effort to show up, give us your signature, and then on the way out, if you want option 1 or 2, you can just give us the forms there and sign up for your session. Okay, so I want to leave you with this thought, this story, but before I do want to thank Rick for having me here today. And I also was hoping we could all give him a round of applause because he tirelessly puts on this event month after month to better the local business community. Okay, thank you. All right, so I want to leave you with this. Come back with me to September of 1983. I was just starting high school. And for those of you trying to do the math, because there's always one, that makes me 44, okay? And if you had been with me this one particular day in my acting class, you would have seen my acting teacher, Mr. Smith. And Mr. Smith was an older, balding gentleman who was probably about 44, actually. And he was a bit rough and kind of intimidating. Can you picture someone like that? So this particular day, he says, Deirdre, Jennifer, come up here and read this scene. So I jump up, and I'm part scared because I've never read a scene for him before, but I'm also excited because I really want to show him what I can do. So we read the scene, and he looks at Jennifer, and he says, Jennifer, well done. You could be the next Meryl Streep. Wow. Now, a couple of things to know. If you weren't around in the 80s, and it looks like many of you were. Hey, I was there with you. You know Meryl Streep was the it girl, right? There was nobody better than Meryl Streep. So I'm sitting there thinking, okay, I've been acting since I was in 4th grade. I usually get a good role. And my crowning role came the year before when I was cast as Scrooge in the 8th grade musical of A Christmas Carol. And I beat 4 boys for that role. That was a very proud moment. But not only that, I also beat Jennifer for the role, okay? So what do you think I'm thinking when he tells Jennifer she could be the next Meryl Streep? Who could I be? Like, oh my gosh, where's this gonna go, right? So I look at him, and he looks at me, and he says, Deirdre, that stunk. I was devastated. Devastated. It literally felt like my heart, has that ever happened to you? Had been torn in two in that moment. And now I wish I could tell you that because of that moment, I grew a thicker skin. I wish I could tell you that I just chalked it up to a bad day or a bad opinion. But you know what? I didn't do any of that. And you know what else I didn't do? I didn't take the stage again for 24 years. Yeah. No speaking like this, no acting, no nothing. Now, obviously, something's changed because I'm standing here today. And what changed was that when I started my coaching practice, I knew speaking was the best way to get out there, to get credibility, visibility, help the most people, get leverage. But I had a big problem. I was terrified. I never wanted to hear those words, "you stink" again. So please don't say that to me if you think that after this. I'll start crying. Nobody wants that. Okay, so I fortunately stumbled upon the work of my mentor, Craig Valentine. And I started using his system to write my talks. And having a system actually gave me the confidence to get back on the stage. And then what happened over time was I dug into the system, started learning it even more, and I started getting paid to speak. I'm like, wow, this is fascinating. Then I started selling from the stage and then bringing in leads from the stage and then started coaching other entrepreneurs how to do it too. And the reason I tell you this story is that great speakers are not born that way. They are made. And there's nothing unique or different about me. What's very unique and very special and different is the Speak and Get Results system. So no matter where you are right now, maybe you're like I was and you are terrified to take the stage. You'd love to grow your business through speaking, but you're terrified. Maybe you're not scared at all. Maybe you were like Dr. Becky and you just don't know what to say and you don't know how to convert when you speak. Or maybe you're like my client Jim, who's an international speaker, but he knew he needed an outside set of eyes to get to the next level. No matter where you are in the continuum, the Speak and Get Results system can help you get from point A to point B. So, if you want a marketing strategy, and this is why I love speaking, that you get to embody. Like, once you learn this skill, you get to own it, right? It goes with you wherever you are. It doesn't matter if you change businesses or change jobs. It doesn't matter if you're in your personal life or your professional life. It becomes a part of you. And if you want a marketing strategy that can forever answer the question, as it's done for me and many of my clients, where is my next client going to come from? Then I encourage you to ask yourself the question today, is it my time to speak and get results? Thank you.